Go ahead, Christina.
Great. Thanks so much, Stephanie, and welcome everyone to our very first Entrepreneurship Essentials. This is really exciting for us to be launching a new series that will support our I-Corps alums, but also bring in maybe some new faces. Definitely see some folks I haven't seen before. So for those of you who don't know about I-Corps, we wanted to just share a little bit about the opportunity so that you know that there's other resources available to you for support. So our I-Corps hub covers the whole Northeast, although we do have 10 specific university partners that make up the hub. We can serve any researcher or entrepreneur in the Northeast, whether or not you're at any of those universities or not at a university at all. If you have especially a tech innovation that you're interested in exploring the commercial potential around, we can support you through our programs. So I-Corps in general helps teams to understand the potential of their idea to become a product or service or a startup, right, to support or to benefit society. We provide grants. The regional program provides a $3,000 grant, and there's other programs after that provide larger grants. We have a fantastic team of mentors, and we also provide opportunities to next step programs such as SBIR and STTR grants and the National I-Corps program. So the reason that I-Corps exists is because the number one reason that startups fail is because they build something that nobody wants. So we address this through customer discovery. So understanding not just if you build it, they will come, but that the data shows that we must understand our customers and what they want to get done, what pain points they have, what unmet needs they have, and then build something that addresses that rather than kind of the other way around, which is I have a technology, now I'm going to go sell it and hope for the best, right? So this is kind of evidence-based entrepreneurship rather than faith-based. So the hypothesis that you might have is that someone will value or pay for what I plan to build. And then we test that hypothesis by interviewing potential customers to see if that's true. So the I-Corps process teaches you how to do that. And interestingly, Glen and I met when he was a mentor at a national team, I don't know, 5 years ago now, I guess it was, down in DC, maybe more, I don't know, COVID years blend together. But the entrepreneurship pathway is in front of us here. So maybe you're starting out with an innovation, maybe you already have a startup, that's okay. If you're interested in exploring how your solution could address customer needs, we can train you first through the regional I-Corps program. There's a couple of those offerings. They're always available, but there's a couple flavors of that. And then you can go on to the National I-Corps program, which provides a $50,000 grant. And then that makes you more competitive for an SBIR, STTR, or next step resources like MADV and Robinhood. Our two regional I-Corps programs are Novus and Propellus. Novus is a half-day program followed by some self-paced coursework. It's just an introduction to I-Corps and allows you to kind of get your feet wet without committing to the 4-week program. But our flagship regional program is the Propellus program. It's a 4-week long program that we do via Zoom every other month. We accept about 30 teams in any cohort, and we give each team a $3,000 grant so they can go do customer discovery, going to conferences, joining professional associations, et cetera, to test that hypothesis around, does anyone want to buy what I plan to build? In Propellus, you're required to have a team. There are 2 core team members required as a team, the technical lead and an entrepreneurial lead. If you're an academic affiliated team, that means you're probably going to be a university faculty member and a postdoc combo or a grad student, but it doesn't have to be this way. There just needs to be a technical point of contact and an entrepreneurial lead, who the entrepreneurial lead is kind of the center of the team. And then optionally for regional I-Corps, you can have an industry mentor. We love it if you do, but it's not required. We have a robust team of mentors in any regional program. The next opportunity is May 15th. That's the deadline to apply for our 9th Propellus cohort, and the dates are here. They're again always on Zoom, and we don't do in person because we cover the whole Northeast. So with that, thank you, Stephanie. You can stay connected with us by liking any of our social media. I'll put that in the chat in a moment, or if any of our coordinators can help me out with that, that would be great. And of course, if you're interested in applying to the regional I-Corps program, you can do that through our website. So that's all I have. I will turn it back over to Stephanie to introduce our panelists today.
Yes. Welcome again, everybody, to the very first Entrepreneurship Essential series. We plan to have this webinar once about every 2 months, and today we're so happy and so grateful to introduce to you our 2 speakers, Ellen Weber, and she's from Robinhood Ventures, as well as Glen Gaddy, who is also who is a managing member at Robinhood Ventures. And today we're going to talk about how to craft a compelling pitch deck. Go ahead. Thank you. Sorry, Alan, you're still on mute.
Yeah, I'm muted. Okay. Let me just share my screen. Okay. Thank you all for having us here. Glenn and I are going to talk about the elements of a pitch deck, and we're going to show you examples of what should be in a pitch deck from companies that we've worked with. Okay. Sure. Everything's working. Okay. So first of all, we want to start with what is an investor pitch? Because there's sometimes some confusion around it. An investor pitch is generally a short pitch, 8 to 12 minutes, with an investor focus as opposed to with a technology focus. So you want to talk about the business as well as the technology, and we'll walk you through all the things you need to cover. It's used in your first meeting or to even get a first meeting. It's also used at venture fairs and business plan competitions. The idea is to really grab attention early and keep it by hitting the highlights. And the goal is to leave the investor wanting to know more. So you're not going to tell them everything. You want to tell them enough to get them interested and excited and to have them say, I want to learn more. Let's have a conversation. So it's not intended to be a technology presentation. It's not intended to be a sales presentation. And you want to avoid getting into the weeds, what we call getting into the weeds. So there's 4 main things that investors want to know. They want to understand what's the problem, what's your solution, why are you the team to solve the problem, and how will you make me money? Because at the end of the day, as much as they want to help build companies and support you, they also, expect to make some money doing this. So these are the general topics you're going to want to cover, and we're going to walk through each of these, okay, and step by step. So the first thing is the title slide. And oftentimes the title slide is on for a while people are taking their seat or getting ready, or, the sound's not working, whatever. So you want to make sure your title slide really grabs attention. It's got the company name and the logo, and it should be a highly professional image. And it should have some kind of statement on there, which helps people understand what your company does, and a wow statement. So here's an example of a company that we are currently in the process of funding. So it's Waveley DX, and it's their tagline is phone-based diagnostics for pediatric care. And it gets your attention. There's a cute kid, and someone looking at this can understand that it's pediatric care. It's just a very simple but compelling first slide. So I'm going to talk, and then Glenn, Glenn's going to jump in a number of places. But so up front, you want to define the problem or the opportunity, right? Which is the thing that you were working at iCore to prove that there really is an opportunity. So you want to identify who the customer is, what their problem is, how you know there's a problem, and how do you create value. So again, you can do a very compelling slide to do that. So here's an example. Glenn, do you want to talk them through this one?
Yeah, one of the issues that you get into, especially with a technology startup, is that a generalist audience is not necessarily going to understand what the value is. So for example, this is a company that makes an alternative medical device to treat glaucoma. And what they're talking about is all of the other treatment devices that people may have heard of, treating it with medication or laser or other surgeries, have very, very high failure rates. And that's where they're showing they're differentiated. And this is using a negative to prove a positive. And it's one of the ways you can also use a slide deck to teach the audience about what it is that you're trying to drive towards, that brings a generalist audience on board with a really technical solution.
Right. And Glenn's so right about that. And part of the thing that you want to do is tell a compelling story. You need to know your audience. If you're presenting a glaucoma device in front of, eye surgeons, you can go a little deeper into the technology. But if that's not your audience and you have a mixed audience, then you have to level set. And this is a good place to level set, to kind of explain and bring people on board with understanding that the problem that you've been really focused on is a real problem. So here's another example. This has to do with animal health. So the problem is that there's a lack of innovation in animal health. The standard of care is 30 years old. New regulations make it difficult to use. And not only is it, a problem in many general cases, but very specifically, they were highlighting that African swine fever is devastating pork production in China, which helps the investor say, oh, okay, so there's a real need, there's some money behind this, right? So it's a critical problem. They also use, again, just like the earlier slide used a cute child, they're using cute animals to kind of get your attention. I think there's too many words on this slide, frankly, but I thought they did a nice job of explaining what the problem is.
One of the interesting items here was this was a company that was going after canine cancer initially, and then they listened to the market, and the market said African swine fever is decimating commercial pork production. Bigger opportunity, bigger addressable market. Can you do something about that? And that then led the company, I believe their number one product right now is focused on swine fever. It's not focused on companion animals at all. And that was listen to the market, take it back, figure out if you've got differentiated offering, and then either repackage or rebrand to go after that new opportunity because it is simply larger, more addressable. And for them, what they discovered is if they could solve swine fever, they were selling it to 4 or 5 big pork producers as opposed to every vet and every dog owner, which is a very, very different business model.
Mm-hmm. So then you want to really describe how big that market is. How big is, so you've described the problem at this point. Now, you notice you haven't really talked about your solution yet, right? You're just setting the stage. There's this big problem. Now, here's how big the market is. So you want to talk about how big the market is, and you'll also get into what's your value proposition, what's special and unique about what you're doing, what's the target market, and what are the segments that you're addressing. So here's an example. Glenn, do you want to just talk a little bit about this?
Sure. Everybody wants to think about the total market size, okay, or the TAM, the total addressable market, which is everything to all purchasers worldwide. And the problem is most startups do not have the resources to go after that. If you're Mondelez or you're Hershey or you're Kraft Heinz, yeah, maybe you can do that, but nobody else really can. I just threw out 3 food brands because, usually we think about things that we encounter on a regular basis. The serviceable addressable market is the one that you can really wrap your mind around, that is you and your differentiated offering. And that might be, hey, we're an FDA approved product, but that means we're only approved in the United States. That gives us a serviceable addressable market as opposed to going global, which would require more regulatory or more IP production. And then it's your slice, which is what you can get to, if not immediately, at least in near term. So this might be, okay, you've got IP protection and you've got regulatory pathway in the United States, and you're solving glaucoma and you already know the 50 key opinion leaders in the ophthalmological space. That becomes your slice. The hope is always that your slice grows into the serviceable market, or you get to a favorable exit from an investor standpoint before you need to get there.
So here's an example of market opportunity. And again, there's to me, there's a little bit too much information on this slide, and some of it's how you tell the story. So this goes back to the glaucoma example. So the global glaucoma market's going to exceed 6 billion. That's a big number. It gets my attention. 900,000 US patients will go blind within 10 years. That gets someone's attention. There's 80 million patients worldwide. There's 3.4 million patients in the US. So this gives you a sense of how many people that is affected by this problem that their solution could go after.
One of the challenges with a slide like this, and it's sort of a warning shot, they're mixing years, duration in years, dollars, and patients with CAGR all on one slide. They did that very strategically because they wanted to show the largest opportunities that they possibly could. It's dangerous though, because you get investors asking you, okay, so if it's 6 billion, is that represented by 80 million? Do those align? If that's the case, what's the benefit or the opportunity per patient? How does that then reflect in the US? Because the US has different reimbursement than the rest of the world. You stand a good chance of causing more questions than you're actually answering. Be careful with slides like this.
Mm-hmm. Here's a very simple slide, which gets people's attention. 2.15 billion is spent on asthma-related diseases. So the entrepreneur put this slide up to get the attention. And then they talk through the percentage of the market that they would be going after. But just the simplicity of this slide, it is in opposition to the last slide. This one may be too simple, but it definitely grabs people's attention. So again, part of it's the storytelling. Then you want to, now is the time when you start describing your product or your service. But again, you want to describe it in a visual way, and again, in a way that if you have a mixed audience, that the mixed audience will understand. Because if you lose someone in the first couple of minutes of your presentation, you never get them back. So again, remember, don't get too deep into the weeds and show pictures. And sometimes some of you, if you've got stuff that's going to show a heart being operated on or a lung being sliced open, you have to warn lay people that you're going to show something that's, a little whatever. Again, here's an example. Now there's too many words on this slide. If you took off this small print, I think it's better. But what they did was they showed this is the solution this was the asthma related solution. And they wanted people to see how the size of the product by laying it next to a quarter, and that they actually had a design. So it was real, and that it does three things. It tracks, trends, and manages, and then they could talk through it. So personally, I would not have had all this language in a deck that's going up on a screen, but if I was sending it ahead to people, I might have that language in there. Glenn, anything you want to add on this slide?
No.
Okay. This goes back to the glaucoma example. And some people in our group were like grossed out. I think this is not so gross, but they wanted to show exactly how it worked to give people, a vision of what would happen and how it worked. So they show the different steps. Glenn, anything you want to add here?
Yeah, this is one of those great slides that if they were to do anything other than an animation, there would be a icky yuck effect from some people in the audience if they showed actual eyes with the implantation. So they did a really good job of conveying what it is and where it goes without making it icky yucky for a generalist audience. That's a fine balance. It's not always easy, as you heard Ellen say, but they happen to do a really good job on this one.
And this is a non-biotech example, but I like this slide. Beckon is the first and only premium lactose-free dairy ice cream on the market. That's a very simple sentence. Anyone can remember it and repeat it, and then they show what the product looks like. And it's just laid out very nicely. The colors work. It's readable. So I thought I'd show you this one as well. So then you want to explain the competitive landscape. And your goal of talking about the competition is use the competition so that you can explain why you're going to win, why your solution is better than everyone's, and what this, without revealing your, the special sauce, without going too deep into the detail. what are the barriers to entry and what are the weaknesses of the other products and why you're going to win. So typically, this is the method that people use. I also included in this, it's a video which just tells you how to put this slide together. But bottom line, the idea is you put your company here in the first column, then you put your competitors going across, you pick the benefits where you excel, and then you use comparisons. If you're competing on price, you're going to show price. If you're competing on, how quickly you can implement, or how, if you're saying you can shave 10 minutes off an operation, then you're going to show the amount of time it takes to do something. You're going to come up with the benefits that apply to your offering. So that's the framework. And then here's an example, and I'm going back to the Beckon example. So these were the things that, made them special. So it's lactose free, it's creamy texture from dairy, and clean ingredients, and then, just very natural stuff. And then they also included women owned because that gave them a competitive advantage in the marketplace, because there's some benefits if you're a woman owned company. Glenn, anything you want to add here?
Yeah, it's really, really good ice cream. Really, really good ice cream. And one of the challenges when you're coming into the market, especially a consumer market, is the entire audience knows what ice cream is. This is not like glaucoma surgery where you have to educate. What you have to be able to tell the audience here is why you're going to win when you've got these other people that they've heard of. Everybody's heard of Ben and Jerry's. And so as a result, you've got to be able to come in and go really quickly, concisely go what we are, what they're not, why we can win, why that market to win is big enough to get a favorable exit outcome for an investor.
And this is a very standard slide. It should be in every pitch deck. There is another way to do it, and that is to just say, your company is the best at something and why. And one of the examples that I've seen done well is, Bikram yoga was the best, practice to create materials to help practitioners and leaders develop their practice. So that's what they were the best at. So sometimes people use this, or they might do the grid that we just showed you, and then this is how they get the message across. We are the best at blank blank because of this. Okay. The next thing, and this is going to be appropriate for almost all of you, is intellectual property. And this is my buddy Glen's one of his favorite topics. So Glen, why don't you talk to them about intellectual property?
Yeah, one of the key features that everybody's got to realize is investors care about the business value of your intellectual property, not how well written your patent is, or how broad it is, or how many trademarks you have, or any of those sorts of things. So being able to translate that as a technical founder into something that an investor can embrace, because what it should do is give you an unfair advantage in the markets that you're going after. A patent in the United States, by design, gives you the opportunity to be the only one that practices that art for some period of time. Okay, what's the business value of that? How many customers does that give you? What's your favorable pricing? All of those sorts of things. So thinking about intellectual property with a business value lens is what the expectation of investors is. And what does that mean? It also means the expense side needs to be taken into consideration. Investors care very much that you're not spending all your money writing, generating, and protecting patents, because a big patent portfolio can require a lot of care and feeding, which means money. And if that money would be better going towards marketing or creating business value, than preserving a patent that's not doing that, most investors are going to say, yeah, forget that patent. That's a problem for a lot of technical founders because they came into it thinking that their patents were all valuable. My attitude is one patent can be hugely valuable, but 100 patents is just a real drag on any startup company. It's great if you were the old Bell telephone. It's great if you're modern day Samsung or some of the chip companies. It's not great for most startups. Think about that one piece of art that you're protecting that is key to your business and creating real value. And that's where the focus of intellectual property should be for most startups.
So Glenn, I have a question for you. I noticed that some entrepreneurs actually put the patent number on the slide. And as soon as they do that, I see you on your phone looking it up.
Yeah.
So do you recommend that people do that, or do you think that's distracting?
It can be distracting, but if it's a seminal patent and you are talking about how that protects your unfair advantage in a marketplace, go ahead and put it on, because people are going to look at it. Often I'm looking at it because if they're going to make a claim later about what their market is or something else, I want to make sure that my view of what they're protecting agrees with what they're claiming is their addressable market as a result of that IP. But no, we've also had them where they've put 20, 25 patents on a slide, just all the numbers. That's just distracting.
Yeah. Okay. Then you want to talk about how you're going to go to market. And you don't have to follow the order that I'm sharing here, like religiously. It's not the law, but this is this kind of lends itself to good storytelling. Sometimes you may, and I'll show you when we get to the management slide, sometimes people move that up front, but this is just the general kind of cadence for a presentation. So you're going to, so you've talked about who your target customers are. Now you're going to tell us, how are you going to reach those first few customers? What are the key messages for target market segments? What are the partnerships and alliances that you're going to need? And a lot of times we see people just say, they're going to go to market using social media. That is not a strategy. Okay. And that's a little tactic. And it may be a very expensive one, but that's not the whole focus of how you're going to go to market. So think about partnerships, alliances, key audiences, how you're going to get to them. So here's an example. This is one that I thought they did a nice job of it. This is a go-to-market strategy slide for software focused on it's immigration software. And they have two audiences. So they do a nice job of showing the two audiences. And some of you may have that. You might have to sell the hospital as well as individual physicians, or you might need to sell a clinic and patients. There's different kinds of, you may have multiple audiences. So they show the two audiences and the events that they're going to go to, the partnerships that they're going to forge. They might even talk about how far they are with these partnerships. And then they talk about social media and how they'll go direct, how they'll go to direct to the specific customers that they're going to. So I like this slide for that reason. It's able to show both of the markets as well as how they're getting there. Glenn, anything you want to add to go to market?
No, that's good.
Okay. So the next slide, and this is really important because if you ask most investors, what are they investing in? They're investing in the people, they're investing in the market, and then they're investing in the product that you need to show that you have a team that has the ability to drive this product to find product market fit, which again is part of iCore, right? You're trying to prove that that this is something that customers care about. So, but you need to show that you are the people who can do this. So you're going to talk about the management team. You're going to focus on 2 or 3 of the founders, and I'll show you an example of things that you might put in there. You're also going to talk about an advisory board. The advisory board kind of rounds out your deficiencies or adds strength to a particular area. And those should be industry experts, key executives, things like that. Going through iCore, Christina mentioned the mentorship program. Some of your mentors may end up being advisors. You have to ask their permission before you put them on a slide as your advisors, because, you know, if Glenn is at a meeting and he sees someone he knows picture on as an advisor, he's going to be texting them during the meeting saying, oh, what do you think about this company? And if the person, you know, and the person says, why are you asking me? That's not good. And it's even worse if you put Glenn or me on a slide after just one or two conversations. Okay. Talking to an investor or a mentor once or twice does not make them an advisor. And that's a whole conversation for another day. But anyways, so this is a slide I like. I'm going back to the Beckon team, and they had some fun with this. They're relatively young entrepreneurs, and relatively, their background wasn't entrepreneurship, but what they did was they described themselves and what the skills that they were bringing. So Katie, and they had some fun with it. So Katie is lactose intolerant. She's a co-founder focused on sales and operations. She graduated from Villanova. She used to be a nurse, and she's a graduate of the Penn State ice cream program. Not many people know that there's a Penn State ice cream program, but if you are creating an ice cream brand, that's really important. That's actually more important than the fact she graduated from Villanova. So think about what is special and unique about you. That means that you're the right person to be leading this team. And then Gwen is an ice cream lover, and she has a background in marketing and brand strategy. And she was a brand marketing manager at L'Oreal, which is really, you know, their marketing is just, you know, their brand marketing is just gorgeous. And then they rounded it out with some fabulous advisors. So they have John Leahy, who's the former president of Kind Bars. So it's in the food space. You know, he understands distribution. He understands building market. He understands strategy. And then they're a little light on the finance side. So they brought in the former VP of finance. And so that was a really, you know, that was a really good thing. And then, you know, and then there were other people that they brought in as well. So this is a nice slide for all those reasons. Glenn, do you want to add anything about management slides?
The one thing to convey on the management slide is that you've got the team that is going to see the company through whatever growth you're asking the investors to fund at that time. And if that means that you're asking for enough money to hire some people, those people should appear as part of the management team. So the classic example is the solo founder understands, you know, they're a technologist maybe, and they understand they don't understand finance, or they need somebody on the marketing side. They've gone out asking for funding to be able to then hire that person. That position's description becomes part of the management team slide. Don't forget about that. Mm-hmm. That's perfectly appropriate and understood by investors. Oh, okay, so this 150,000 or whatever it is to support that person. Cool. If I'm the investor, I know 3 people that would be perfect for that position. I'll introduce them to if I become an investor.
And you want to be, I want to use the word honest, but you have to be honest about everything. But I guess you have to be, you have to have clarity around who's full-time and who's not. Because the first question we're going to ask is, well, who's full-time and who's not? And you might say, you know, this person is, you know, we don't need a full-time CFO in the beginning. So we're using this person, you know, on an as-needed basis, or we're going to hire this, you know, this person's doing some work for us. When we get the funding, we'll bring this person in. If you have a person who doesn't want to be identified because they have, you know, a full-time job, then you can use the position description as Glenn was saying. So there's a lot of things you can do with the management slide, but have fun with it. I think you can be creative. Now you start talking about the money, and that's when you'll see investors kind of perk up as soon as you start talking about the dollars. So there's 2 components to it. First of all, what's your revenue model, right? You know, are you charging per device? Are you charging per, per user? You know, what's your revenue model? And then you want to show a simple financial slide. We're going to show you some examples of each of these. So this is a math product, and it's a subscription model. And then they describe what people receive It's an annual contract. So we understand it's a subscription model. It's a recurring annual contract. Investors love the word recurring. Okay. And one of the hardest things to get behind is, a device that only gets bought once every 5 years, right? So think about what your recurring revenue might look like. And then, there's some detail about what the person gets. That might be a little bit too much detail. The magic words in here is it's a subscription model and it's recurring annual contract. Glenn, you want to add anything?
No, the whole issue of how do you stay in your customer's pocket long term really, really, really matters. Because once you've won them as a client, it's much easier to sell them more things than it is to find another one and another one and another one. Look, I understand that becomes a real challenge if you're selling a medical device, for example. If you're selling someone a new heart valve or a new hip, they never want to buy another one from you. So your model is fundamentally different, and your economics have to prove that you can be successful. But for most other models, it's much better to figure out how you can keep that customer. So in the heart valve, hip replacement, don't think about the actual end user as the customer. Think about the surgeon that's doing 2 or 3 of them a day as the person, the influence, even though they're not a customer. And obviously in healthcare, the model is the insurer the customer, is the physician the customer if they're special, or is the end user. You need to think about who that is, that you can gain them as a customer and then keep them over time, selling them more and more. If it's the end user as the customer, that's fine. But if it's a physician or other model, you just need to understand that and convey that your market penetration, your marketing efforts are generating who you need long-term to continue to be able to make your business just more and more successful.
Okay, good. Thank you. And then you want to show your financials. And this is what investors want to look at for your financial projections. They don't want to see charts with bars. They don't want to see, this is exactly what they want to see. They want to see it rounded to the nearest thousands. They want to see what the unit, what the driver is of the revenue. They want to see the revenue projections. They want to see expenses, and then they want to see what you could either call net income or EBITDA. We could care less about stuff like depreciation, amortization, all the accounting kind of stuff. We could care less about that. We want to understand what the net is. If you have a really good gross margin, you might want to show the gross margin percentage as well. And you want to use real years. If you use year 1, year 2, year 3, it sounds like an academic project as opposed to a real business. So you're going to show actuals, and it's okay to show a loss. In fact, if you don't have a loss, you really don't have a big need for funding. So we're not going to be scared away by seeing losses for a few years. So you want to show actuals from last year, and then you want to show what you project as the revenues. And again, this is rounded to the nearest thousands, okay? And that's important, because if you tell me you're going to have $10,795,332.16 of expenses in 2025,
No.
You're not. You just don't know. So the other thing, I'm going to steal Glen's thunder on this, but the other thing is no typos on the financial slides. I mean, no typos anywhere, but especially not on the typo slides. So I have a typo here, and I've kept it in over the years because I just want to really highlight that if there's an error in your financials, you lose all credibility. Everything could have been perfect up to that point. And if your numbers don't work and it doesn't tie back to other things in your story, you lose credibility. So for example, if you said that you had a product that was going out to the mass market and was going to require a tremendous amount of marketing, marketing dollars, and you're not showing big bucks for expenses, that makes us wonder. Okay. So that's something you need to think about. There's a slide that I forgot to put in, and I apologize for it. And it's going to be very important for the work that you do. And that's the milestone slide. So you can tie the milestone slides to your financials, right? So you can show what you've accomplished to date, and then what you're going to do. You could do it quarter by quarter or year by year, and it should tie not only to, in a way, to the financials. Like, if you're showing financial, if you're showing we're showing a big leap between 22 and 23 in terms of revenue. So you need to, that needs to be explained in the milestones. In 23, we're going out to market, and we already have 3 hospitals signed up, right? So you need to have something in the milestones that matches with the financials. You can also tie it to funding needs. So in 2023, we're here to raise, 500,000, and we are going to need to raise more money in 2025. These numbers do not back that up, but your numbers probably would back up. We need some money now, and we're going to need some money in a couple of years, and that should tie to your milestones. Oh, I do have it. Silly me. Okay. So here's an example of some milestones. So it should be, but I usually like to see milestones before you show me the dollars, but so anyway, so milestones. So here in 2022, we built the alpha prototype. We did that with 500,000 of funding. And then in second quarter 2023, we'll be at the full development stage. We'll have some pilot studies done. And so again, your funding, your financial projections should reflect this. We're going to have approvals and pilots, for a class 2 device, and get 510K clearance in 3Q 2024. So based on this, we don't expect to see any revenue coming in. Funding is not revenue. Okay, that's separate. We wouldn't expect to see if you're not, if you don't have clearance yet. Oh, go ahead, Glenn.
Yeah, one clarification on that. Revenue for the IRS versus revenue as realized for investors can be 2 different things. Revenue for the IRS, if you've got a grant, right, you've got to claim that. That is revenue to the company because it's a grant, but it's not for the sale of product. And if you've got an investor that's investing in your company because your company is going to sell product, it might make sense to separate grant money or other free, meaning non-dilutional money, from revenue money. Because what most successful companies are, you'll have grant money up front, especially if it's, a tech transfer or something that has a ready opportunity to get grant money. Hopefully you've raised a lot of it. And that gets you through this early stage, gets you through alpha, gets you even to a product fix. But then revenue will take off in out years from sales of whatever, software product, services, related services, any of those sorts of things. You need to tell the audience what your model is and the milestones that tie in accordingly. Because often what it means is that your milestones are raising multiple rounds of capital before you've got product into market. Regulated products absolutely fall into this category. If you've got to go through the FDA, or you've got to go for a CE mark, or you've got to do those sorts of things, you're probably not generating revenue as an investor would want it recognized until you're beyond that. But that same investor doesn't necessarily want to put in a whole lot of money that's going towards lab animals. Let's get some non-dilutional grant money to do that. You just need to own the model and have the right milestones to tie into
it. This is just another version, showing that these are the milestones that that the company's going to hit, and then and how much money it's going to take to hit each of those to hit each of those milestones. Funding and uses. So here you're going to say, here's my ask. Here's how much money we need. Here are the basic terms. It's going to be a note, or it's going to be equity. It's going to get us through the 18-month runway or a 12-month runway or whatever. Our next anticipated raise will be whatever the amount is. So you want to describe the terms, and you know how much money you need, and then you want to show what that money's going for. And if you've already raised some money, you can list that here. If the founders have put money in already, you can include that. If you've got some grant funding, you can include that here. And if you've already got some money soft circled as part of this round, you can include that. Nothing gets an investor more excited about a company than thinking they might miss out on it. So you're raising 500,000, you've already raised 200,000. That creates some, FOMO. So you want to do that if you can. And then you want to talk about your exit strategy. Who might acquire you? Is it going to be a pharma company? Is it going to be a hospital? Is it going to be a technology company? Who's going to buy you? And what are some comparable sales that have occurred in that market? That may be a little far away for some of you to be thinking about, but that is something that we would want to see at the time you come for institutional funding. And then your last slide should just, should repeat your logo, should repeat your statement of who you are, and then should have some, some kind of identifying information. This slide will often be the last slide showing. Some people like to leave with the acquisition activity because it gets people excited. Some people like to leave it on the ask. It's up to you and what's the most compelling part of your story. I wanted to show you very closely. Some of you are thinking, okay, Ellen, you keep talking about the storytelling, and I've got a really technical solution. So how do you really expect me to do something as pretty as Beckon ice cream, right? That's kind of easy to make it look pretty. So I wanted to show you very quickly an example. Vinod Khosla is an investor on the West Coast, and he showed a series of slides that he worked on with an investor. And it's not, by the way, this is not Theranos, okay? Just so you know, because it looks a little bit like it. So glucose monitors today. This was the original slide. There's a ton of words. It doesn't make a lot of sense. There's a lot of messy pictures on it. This is what 90% of the scientific companies that we see show us in their first slide. And it's ugly, and I can't read it. And I'm like really reading it. And so I'm not listening, and you've lost me in your first minute. Okay. So this is what most of them look like on your first cut. This was the second cut to talk about, our mission, no more finger sticks. And then, here they have, like a compelling statement. And then they have a picture of a finger stick, right? And this is what we don't want anymore. But then they've got all this, horrible clip art all around it. And I'm looking, I don't know my eye doesn't know where to go, what to look at, what to think about. This was the last slide they came up with. Okay. So you start with this, and then you can go, when you're talking about your solution, and then you can go back to some of the deeper detail on it. Glenn, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, this is the classic, you can convey more with less. And, getting rid of words and having images is much, much better in a pitch deck because it tends to stick with the audience. There's been a number of studies along these lines. People don't remember words nearly as much as they do visuals. So thinking about having impactful visuals and minimizing your words is really, really helpful.
And I think this would be a great last slide to leave while Q&A is going on. And on that note, I'm going to stop sharing, and we've left a little time for Q&A.
Thank you so much, Glenn, Gaddy, and Ellen Weber, for the very interesting and useful talk. We already get some feedback on the chat room that, the case studies are very interesting and useful. So I'd like to open the floor for Q&A. If anybody has any question right now, you can raise your hand, and don't forget to unmute.
Vic Sharma put in a question. I started to answer it in the chat about more detailed financial modeling tools. There are a lot of them. A lot of them have come on the market in the last couple of years. The people at Gust, who is the platform that we onboard deals at Robinhood and at Mid-Atlantic Diamond Ventures, they have partnered with a company called Forecaster. It's not cheap. It's $2,000, $3,000 a year kind of thing, but they will manage a lot of, here's your model, play with this, how does it change, how does it compare with the standards in your industry, all of those sorts of things. They do that. Carta, which is the cap table, or grew out of being the cap table company, they've got something. So there are resources out there. The key is you need to know your numbers, and then you need to be able to compare those to the standards in your industry, because there's a good chance that the investors know what the standards in your industry are, and they're just going to evaluate you versus everywhere else. You know, you're not going to tell most investors that you're going to be 3 or 4 times more profitable than any of your competitors unless you can defend it, and that defense should be core to your value proposition.
Great. Thank you, Glenn. And Alan just posted a link to register for office hours, right, Alan?
Yes.
Robinhood.
Right. So it's not a time to pitch. It's a time to talk to investors about your venture, to get feedback on it, to see if they think it might be investable, or to ask them, questions about the best approach, which state, what steps to take, that sort of thing. And so we have different office hours for general tech as opposed to life sciences. I also put something in the link about Mid-Atlantic Diamond Ventures. If you want to see, entrepreneurs do pitches, people who are ready for investment, because it's through a university. Yeah, usually you have to be an accredited investor to attend, but because we do it through a university, you are welcome to join us. It'll be on June 16th.
Great. And any other questions from the audience? Don't forget to unmute.
I have a quick question. Stephanie, I don't know if you can see me with my
Sure.
hand raised. So Ellen and Glenn, thanks so much for giving all this really great information. Super helpful for a lot of our audience in the Northeast iCore Hub. It sounds to me like you were mentioning about, putting something in the slide and saying something else, but then sometimes the dynamics are you send a slide in advance. So it sounds like you're telling us that you need 2 slide decks, one, prepared.
Glenn, what are your thoughts?
The issue is that if you're going to leave a standalone slide deck, often it needs to have more words on it in order to convey the message without the talk over. My preference is to have recorded your own voice talking over your slide deck. If you've had a request, hey, leave us with something, is to do that rather than sending the slide deck without narration. So it's, in today's world, look, you can go on Zoom, you can record you pitching your slides and provide that rather than just the slide deck. If you're doing a slide deck, it should only be to an investor and have high confidence in, because misappropriations of those slide decks is just simply too easy. And I don't mean that they're going off and trying to knock you off or give it to your competitors. What I'm saying is the message is lost because you're not talking over it. Does that help, Mark?
Yeah. But I also think, and I also think it is important that, because some people are more verbal and some people are more visual, that every slide should be crystal clear to the viewer what the point is of your slide. And that's one of the reasons we say don't have too many words on it, because then we don't know what the point of the slide is. So I might hear you, I might hear all your words, but sometimes I might get lost in a thought or something. And so if you're able to convey in a very few words, the point of the slide, that helps as well. It helps anchor the person in what you're telling them.
And I guess it,
Mhm.
I was going to say, I guess it sounds like, again, the slides are the slides. You can always answer later. You can have a discussion about whatever questions come later, but the
Right.
pitch is the pitch.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay.
Well,
I have a follow. I have a follow-up to that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much also for the super informative presentation. So what about an executive summary? If you want to have a slide deck that has mostly pictures and just few words that kind of provide the necessary kind of like quotes that will people will remember. It's like, oh, okay, this is the value, blah, blah, blah. But you also have information that, you know, they might have questions for each slide. So sometimes, you know, instead of maybe doing a recording, you have like an executive summary that's way more detailed.
The issue simply becomes you want the investor to engage in a follow-on conversation. That's the objective of all this. My hope is that you can do that with a live pitched deck. But if you can't, because that's not the way they roll, and some VCs have a very, very, very strict way of handling whatever, pitch decks, executive summaries, applications, whatever. You've got to play by their rules. They're not going to come to you. You've got to go to them. If that's the case, go do it, right? But keep this in mind. Unless you can read the audience like I'm reading the audience speaking to you all, I have no idea what they've got, right? I don't know if they understand what I'm saying, because if you just give them an executive summary, if they didn't understand the pitch deck, are they necessarily going to understand the executive summary? And I don't mean understand it from a technical standpoint. I mean understand it from an investment opportunity standpoint. That's the reason why, if at all possible, you want the engagement to be when you can talk to the opportunity and you can get at least box level feedback from your audience, right? It's even better in person because then you get full body. You know, you can't read my legs and whether I'm crossed or not, or any of those sorts of things on Zoom, which you could live in person, but it is better than just having a, here's the deck, let me know what you think.
Yeah, Duxon did a study, and I think they showed that the average investor spent, what, 2 minutes looking at a slide deck, Glenn, with some very tiny amount of time. It's still better than sending them nothing, but.
I also, by the way, when I get slide decks, I review them. I go to the financials first, then I go to the ask. And if I'm properly persuaded, then I'll go back and see the story from the start. I completely ignore those initial slides.
Yeah, great.
That's just me.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Ellen and Glenn, for the very interesting talk. We all appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm very, very sure that many of the audience find this very enlightening, useful, and lively. And before we wrap up this session, I'm going to invite Mark de Guzman. He's the coordinator for the Northeast ICOR Hub. He's going to talk very briefly about the upcoming programs at NSF ICOR. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Ellen and Glenn, for your really amazing discussion today. I think it really helped a lot of our folks today. So thank you so much. And just a couple of upcoming events. We do, one of our core programs is a Novus program that many of our institutions have to offer. So we're running one at Rutgers University on May 18th. So if you want, just go to go.rutgers.edu/Novus_Rutgers_spring23. If one of our coordinators can put that in the chat, that'd be great for people to register. That's coming up in May. And the next upcoming Propel Us ICOR program, which Christina mentioned earlier today, was the upcoming deadline for that 4-week program is on May 15th. So if you join the Novus program, which is it's a short workshop half-day program to kind of shift a mindset from the technology to the people who would benefit. And then if you apply for Propel Us, you could be fast-tracked by going through Nova's program. And so, yeah, that's what I mentioned. You can reach out to any of us if you have any questions about that. But the final thing I want to mention for next steps is learn more about Robinhood Ventures. You can go to their website. I think it's robinhoodventures.com. I think Ellen put her Calendly link in the chat, so you can set up office hours with them. Join our newsletter to get updated information about when the next upcoming events are, or you can engage with the faculty leads or the tech transfer office people from your institution. We definitely want to help support you in your innovation efforts, and just look forward to seeing you join us on one of our upcoming sessions, and looking forward to the next Entrepreneurship Essentials. So thank you, Stephanie, for bringing us the Entrepreneurship Essentials. Look forward to the next one. Stay tuned. Yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody. And I hope to see you in 2 weeks' time on our next webinar. Absolutely surrounding, very important topics for early stage ventures and deep tech entrepreneurs. Thank you so much. And thank you again, Ellen and Glenn. We're so glad to have.
Thank you so much. Take
Thank
care.
you so much. Thank you, Ellen and Glenn. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.